A fairy tale that once embodied Disney's boundless creativity and family-oriented charm has now become a symbol of turmoil, frustration, and disappointment. Generations ago, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs enchanted audiences around the world, proving that animation could be more than a sideline to live-action cinema. It was whimsical, it was heartfelt, and it broke every rule in the best way possible. No one imagined that Snow White, a young princess who captivated hearts in 1937, would someday be at the center of one of Disney's most tumultuous controversies. Yet here we are, witnessing what many are calling the studio's biggest fiasco since the rocky days of the early 2000s. How did a once-beloved classic turn into a cautionary tale of overconfidence, misguided marketing, and alienated fans? The answer lies in a swirl of financial missteps, casting backlash, and a growing sense that Disney might be losing touch with what audiences truly want. Today, we'll travel from the legacy of the 1937 masterpiece all the way to the present-day remake, dissecting the company's formulaic approach, the rifts it caused, and the ultimate fallout. Some say this might be a one-off disaster, others fear it's the first sign of a deeper creative breakdown within Disney. One thing is certain. The story behind this new Snow White is more revealing than any magic mirror could ever be. 5. Rachel Zegler's controversial comments, fuel on the fire. The debate escalated when Zegler publicly referred to certain elements of the 1937 film as outdated and problematic. She argued that a modern audience needed more than a damsel in distress who sings away her troubles. On the surface, her stance echoed a broader cultural shift towards stronger, more independent female characters. Nonetheless, her tone in interviews and social media posts struck a nerve. Instead of gracefully celebrating the original while highlighting the reasons for an update, some believed she outright dismissed the film that established the Disney empire. Social media erupted. Hashtags praising Zegler clashed with those condemning her remarks. The controversy snowballed when fans noticed she didn't mince words in describing how different her version of Snow White would be. Rather than reassuring longtime Disney aficionados that the new film would maintain the heart of the original, Zegler's statements seemed to suggest a stark departure from almost everything people treasured about the 1937 classic. Blogs, YouTube channels, and Twitter threads buzzed with accusations that Disney was replacing sweetness and whimsy with self-important storytelling. Kevin Sorbo, known for his role as Hercules in the 1990s, jumped in, tweeting sarcastically about the bold choice to disregard the source material. His commentary resonated with critics who felt that Disney had forgotten the legacy it once upheld. If the goal was to generate excitement, the controversy ended up alienating an enormous chunk of the fan base. 6. The box office disaster. How the numbers tell the tale. When opening weekend rolled around, all eyes were on Snow White. Industry insiders predicted at least a decent performance, maybe not a billion-dollar juggernaut, but certainly not an outright bomb. Yet the film crawled to an underwhelming $42.2 million domestically. This wasn't just below expectations, it was alarmingly low. By comparison, previous live-action remakes like Beauty and the Beast opened at $174 million, while even Aladdin managed $91 million. The drop of over 50% in the second week spelled doom for the film's prospects. A $20 million haul in its sophomore weekend indicated that word of mouth might have been largely negative. Viewers who ventured out opening week didn't seem to be recommending it to friends. And the fiasco wasn't isolated to North America. International markets, often a lifeline for Hollywood blockbusters, also delivered lukewarm to dismal returns. Some regions did show mild curiosity toward the film, but the general consensus was that this new version lacked the magic that once made Disney the titan of family entertainment. As box office analysts began crunching the numbers, the picture got even bleaker. With a reported production budget of $250 to $270 million, plus a colossal marketing campaign, breaking even seemed next to impossible. Investors started asking hard questions. Disney shareholders expressed concerns about whether the current leadership fully grasped the importance of balancing modern twists with the heart of these age-old tales. 9. What went wrong behind the scenes? Insiders began leaking tales of a chaotic production process. Multiple script rewrites, conflicts between creative leads, and last-minute marketing shifts painted a picture of a studio struggling to find the right balance. Executive meddling may have also played a role. Some sources claim that Disney higher-ups insisted on heavy messages to appease certain demographic demands, while others wanted to preserve traditional story elements for longtime fans. The result, critics say, is a film that tries to do too much and ends up pleasing nearly no one. This behind-the-scenes drama also included misjudgments about audience sentiment. Early test screenings reportedly showed mixed reactions, but decision-makers either dismissed the feedback or scrambled to make changes too late in the process. By the time the film was locked, the marketing campaign was already underway, focusing on how different and rebellious this Snow White would be. Although boldness can be commendable, the strategy backfired because Disney never clearly articulated why these changes were necessary. Rather than celebrating the old and the new, the campaign seemed almost defiant, as though the studio was telling fans, "We know better than you." Needless to say, that didn't go over well. 10. The Kevin Sorbo factor and public dissent. Kevin Sorbo's sarcastic tweet may have been just one celebrity's opinion, but crystallized a sentiment many already shared, that Disney showed little respect for the original's legacy. His background as the titular hero of television's Hercules in the 1990s gave him a footnote in the Disney family, though not in the official canon. Still, for many fans, it was a symbolic moment. Sorbo represented a piece of the nostalgic pop culture tapestry that Disney had long dominated, yet here he was openly mocking the corporation's approach. What followed was a wave of similar critiques from lesser-known voices. Cast members from older Disney projects, animators who once championed the Disney Renaissance, and even popular YouTubers who had built entire channels around celebrating classic Disney films expressed their doubts. Some were more diplomatic, urging fans to give it a chance, but the 11. The financial sinkhole, potential long-term damage. Disney's financial predicament doesn't end with Snow White failing at the box office. A film that costs upward of $250 million to produce and tens of millions more to market is expected to earn significantly more just to break even. Industry analysts predict that Snow White could end up among the biggest money losers in Disney's storied history, possibly rivaling infamous flops like John Carter. While the company is massive enough to withstand a single bomb, the reverberations of a failure of this magnitude could affect future projects. Investors are now on high alert. Shares in Disney have seen fluctuations tied directly to box office performance of its major releases. A spectacular collapse undermines faith in the leadership's ability to read the market, adapt to changing audience tastes, and preserve the studio's cherished heritage. With rumors swirling about upcoming live-action versions of The Little Mermaid sequel and even a Frozen adaptation, concern is mounting about whether the public has grown cynical about these endeavors. Will the average moviegoer spend $15 to see a reinterpretation they fear might undermine what they once loved? The once invincible Disney brand is facing questions it hasn't had to answer in a long time. 12. The role of modernization when updating goes awry. There's no denying that cultural values evolve, and updating older stories to align with contemporary sensibilities can be positive, even essential. The challenge is how to do it gracefully. In the case of Snow White, critics argue that Disney abandoned the gentle layering of timeless morals, love, friendship, perseverance, in favor of a more blunt approach that pointedly dismissed the original's themes. While older fairy tales often reflect the era in which they were created, they still offer universal truths. Suddenly casting them as outdated can feel like a slap in the face to those who grew up loving them. Moreover, Disney has proven it can handle sensitive updates in the past without losing its core. Films like Moana and Encanto introduced modern messages about identity, culture, and family in ways that felt organic and deeply moving. No one accused those films of insulting Disney's legacy because they were original stories carrying forward the spirit of classic Disney magic. With Snow White, however, the reworking of iconic scenes and character traits seemed to overshadow the fairy tale wonder, leaving behind a film that felt more like a statement piece than a homage to a beloved masterpiece. 13. Audience fatigue and the nostalgia factor. Another angle to consider is simple audience fatigue. Over the past decade, viewers have been swarmed with remakes: Dumbo, Lady and the Tramp, Pinocchio, and more. Each promised a fresh spin on a treasured story, but after a certain point, the novelty wore off. People began noticing patterns, the same story beats, the same marketing lines emphasizing modern twists, and the same formulaic structures. Despite intermittent successes, the overall enthusiasm gradually waned. Meanwhile, the competition for audience attention has intensified. Streaming platforms offer endless choices, and viewers can revisit the original animated classics with a single click. To stand out, a remake must offer something genuinely compelling. Nostalgia can draw people in, but it won't keep them once they sense a film is hollow or disrespectful toward the version they cherish. Many families decided they would rather stay home and rewatch the 1937 Snow White on Disney Plus instead of venturing out to see a remake that, from all early signals, strayed too far from the magic that captured their hearts in the first place. 15. The cultural wake-up call for Disney. The fallout from Snow White doesn't exist in a vacuum. It arrives amid a broader reckoning for Disney, which faces challenges in its theme parks, streaming service content, and the brand's overall cultural cachet. For years, Disney was the gold standard, appealing to parents who remembered the classics from their childhood and kids enthralled by new releases. But controversies such as rising ticket prices at Disneyland, the perceived oversaturation of franchises, and a tension between woke storytelling and classic narrative structures have gradually eroded some of that goodwill. The meltdown of this Snow White remake feels like an undeniable signal that Disney needs to re-examine its modus operandi. Simply leaning on the brand's storied past to generate guaranteed hits no longer works. The trust of its audience, families who expect enchanting, uplifting tales, and Disney aficionados who hold the older movies dear, can't be taken for granted. If a studio continues to churn out formulaic remakes that prioritize bold statements over heartfelt storytelling, it risks not just financial losses, but a profound shift in how people perceive the entire Disney legacy. 16. Could this be the end of a live-action boom? Despite the grim numbers, some industry experts predict that Disney will keep churning out live-action remakes. After all, the company has a vast catalog of animated classics that can still be reworked. Projects like the rumored Frozen live-action film or the sequel to The Little Mermaid might be too far along to halt. Still, the question remains whether audiences will line up if they sense these projects are repeating the mistakes of Snow White. It's not inconceivable that we'll see a major pivot from Disney, perhaps a pause in a remake schedule or a more cautious approach where each film's creative direction is more carefully vetted. Fans, for their part, are split. Some vow to boycott future remakes, claiming that Snow White was the last straw. Others maintain a flicker of optimism, hoping Disney will remember the essence of storytelling that once defined the brand. The truth might lie somewhere in the middle. If Disney chooses to learn from this debacle, by blending respectful nods to classic elements with thoughtful modern updates, it could reinvigorate the live-action genre. If not, Snow White could very well be the emblem of a downfall that once seemed impossible for the House of Mouse. 18. A glimmer of hope. Could redemption be on the horizon? Even amid the downfall of Snow White, there's reason to believe Disney can turn things around. After all, this is a studio that has reinvented itself multiple times, recovering from box office failures and internal upheaval to deliver some of the most memorable cultural staples in cinematic history. Future filmmakers within Disney might study what went wrong here and use that knowledge to craft stories that resonate with modern values while still honoring the timeless appeal of beloved characters. It's also worth noting that some fans who initially bashed the direction of Snow White didn't abandon Disney entirely. Where does Disney go from here? Snow White was once the film that launched an empire, showcasing Walt Disney's unwavering faith in animation's potential to dazzle and uplift. In 2025, that same story now represents a staggering fall from grace, a critical and financial calamity that highlights just how far Disney may have drifted from its original mission. Yes, the numbers alone paint a bleak picture, but the real damage is deeper, rooted in a loss of trust and a widening gulf between the studio and its audience. Can Disney rebuild this bridge? Possibly. If it listens carefully to the critiques, balances progress with tradition, and commits to genuine storytelling over formulaic box office grabs, it might rekindle the magic that made it legendary. But one thing is certain, the era of automatic hits powered by mere nostalgia is ending. Audiences are more discerning now, quicker to voice discontent when they sense a disconnection from the core values that turn these fairy tales into cultural touchstones. Whether this is the final chapter for the live-action remake machine or simply a cautionary tale that prompts a creative renaissance is something only time will tell. In the meantime, fans everywhere are waiting, watching, and hoping that Disney remembers what it felt like to take a bold risk on a classic tale and do it right. After all, the greatest magic happens when you honor the past while daring to imagine something truly extraordinary for the future.